it really is a revolutionary way of thinking about your video infrastructure. And,
Right.
as you start to really peel the layers of the onion back, it really starts to make you think about like, wow, what if?
It's kind of like the best of everything stuffed into a box with the ability, to create more.
And to be able to move that data and only have one frame latency, that's pretty amazing.
It gives the church so much flexibility, which is exciting.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Brian Blackmore with Church Production Magazine. And today we're going to be talking about the brand new Panasonic Kairos IP Centric live video processing platform. This was introduced in May, at least publicly. Since then, it's been described as using Photoshop for live video. And somebody else described it as if you take everything you know about speeds and frame rates and connectors and resolutions and you put it into a blender to make a smoothie. That's what you would get with Panasonic Kairos. So it's kind of a new thinking, and we're here to discuss this and how Panasonic Kairos fits into the church market. And today with me, we have Mike Bergeron, who is the Senior Product Manager for Live Production Systems with Panasonic. Say hi, Mike.
Thanks, Brian. Happy to be here.
Okay, we also have Dennis Choy from Saddleback Church.
Hey, Brian. Hey, Church Production Mag, everybody. Good to be here.
All right. Good to see you, Dennis. All right, Dave Clark from Fellowship Church. Say hi, Dave.
Hey, it's great to be here, Brian. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk about this product from Panasonic. Thanks. Great to be on today.
Okay, excellent. And we also have Robb MacTavish, is a video systems engineer based in the Colorado area. So say hi, Rob.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Brian and Mike, for having me on today. I'm excited to hear more about this system.
So, Mike, so this is, like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of a new thinking. It's kind of hard to, maybe for some of us, to get our head completely around what this system does and what it offers to the church market. So, Mike, can you just tell us more about Kairos and specifically how Panasonic envisions it coming into the church market?
Yeah, well, what Kairos does is it brings together three kind of recent innovations that we've been working with in other products. One of those is just basic gigabit IP for control. It's been really crucial for our PTZ cameras and a lot of other things, and compressed streaming formats like NDI, and then the introduction of SMPTE 2110 or ST2110, which allows us to handle the uncompressed SDI type stuff on high capacity internet networks, IP networks, and then by using GPUs to virtualize the actual processing and put that at the center of it all, then we can fully take advantage of the flexibility of all three of those in ways that any one by themselves can't do.
It's a switcher, but it's more than that, right? Right, Mike?
Yeah. I mean, what we've set the operating system to look like is a switcher, and a lot of that has to do with when you put it in front of a technical director, that they can see a panel that is kind of an analog of a switcher. And we do have a hardware panel that looks very much like a 2-stripe or 2ME hardware panel, and in the default mode, that's how it works. But any of the hardware constraints of a switcher are entirely imaginary, and you can just take off the safeties and make it do what you want. We're looking at IP at two different levels. I mean, this is running on a 100 gig network for the 2110, and that's uncompressed, and that runs on the system as uncompressed video, and because of that, we can maintain a low latency. So for a lot of churches that, even if not now, will eventually want to use this for IMAG, they can maintain that one frame latency and have good IMAG with uncompressed video. But because it's IP, you're able to deploy things into different rooms, different buildings, just by extending the network. You run some some ST fiber out to another room, and then boom, you can put another switch there and decide whether you want to put inputs or outputs on it. And now that room is part of your video infrastructure. So it's with the high capacity network, you can maintain the low latency of a broadcast infrastructure and have the flexibility of an IP infrastructure.
Okay, well, let's bring in the panelists. So does anybody want to take that scenario and maybe run with it a little bit?
We're all looking to get our video into different platforms. And, I think as we look at the different churches that are on the panel right now, everybody's in a bit of a different situation. And sometimes you're even talking about other spaces, maybe in your environments or in your buildings that you're wanting to deliver video to. And traditionally that looks like, okay, well, now I got to find either IO cards that are on my current setup, and I've got to run, probably traditional BNC SDI lines, across the building, obviously limitations of that, or you're running fiber, and doing fiber transport, for SDI video. So to have an IP backbone, like that, I mean, talk about flexibility. You drop a switch down, or you have that 100 gig infrastructure and able to send video from one point to another. I mean, that flexibility, I know for us at Fellowship Church, that would be something, especially at a couple of our main campuses, that would be wow. Being able to drop video that fast in a location would be pretty special.
Yeah, it's amazing. Just hearing and reading about the product, Kairos, it's kind of like the best of everything stuffed into a box with the ability, to create more. And so a couple of the key things like I always look for in a product, probably similar to you guys, is, it's affordability obviously is always a question there. And that's a range for every church. It's different, right? Affordable to one church is not affordable to other churches. But so that's a separate category. But flexibility and consistency, I mean, those two things, you get if you can get something with all three, man, that's amazing. And from the looks of it and from what I've seen as a demo, it could be all three in this case. Mm-hmm. And the expandability, because expandability makes it affordable. You can start with a base and go from there. And then like Dave said, man, IP based, man, you already got that cable run everywhere. So just drop it in and run it. So it feels like there's so many great applications for the church world, because of the church world never really knows what they want to do. They want to copy everything everyone else is doing in the real world, right? Isn't that what we want to do? And so we're like, oh, how do we do that? And how do we get this? And how do we make that happen? And you're always having special tools or devices to try to mimic that. And I feel like Kairos has that ability to do a lot of different things, including the multiple outputs on what you can send it to and how you can configure those things. Really excited about the possibilities of it.
One of the things that's really interesting, I've thought for the longest time, like if you look at, our iPhones or whatever smartphone device you use, and you look at what the ability is to do with live video and even real-time effects on an iPhone, whether it's filters or whatever through social media apps and other things. And I've always kind of felt like, man, the live production world almost kind of falls behind a little bit of even what the smartphone technology can do, and allowing you to apply looks and different things like that. But with this platform, you're kind of bringing like I think you alluded to, Brian, before, but like Photoshop or After Effects, and I come from a little bit of a post-production background as well, where you're able to kind of almost marry those two with that kind of UI in the background and applying some of those looks and effects. And I mean, it's really very video media server-esque. If those of you may be familiar with like using LED walls and live production environment and stuff like that, there's a lot of that this system can do, which I showed it to my lighting guide, stage design guy, and he was like, and he immediately starts thinking from a live production video server kind of environment where you're able to manipulate so many of those layers and lay out your stage in different ways. And you're doing that from your video switcher, which is kind of mind blowing, and it's like, that's a totally different way of looking at your infrastructure that I've never really explored before. So that's really interesting.
Well, I want to point out though, is if what you need is the layer based composition, and you really aren't ready to make a move into like a high capacity IP network, you can start out by just using these DeltaCast modules to get SDI or HDMI directly into the into the mainframe. And then, that 100 gig NIC just sits there for the day when you want to start getting involved with the network side of things. So you don't need to do that right away. So if you just want the layer-based switcher, you can make it a fully SDI switcher that's layer-based. And in the same way, as I mentioned before, that if you just want to be able to deploy a network in different rooms, but you've got a TD who wants to keep working the same way he was working before, you can do that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of what Dave was just saying, that I mean, it's got the possibility to be a presentation switcher too. You can use it for multiple applications when you think about it, and your mind can explode. I mean, that layered structuring, it sounds amazing, and want to get in and play with that because it looks like a lot of fun.
Well, when you've got a lot of independent outputs, you start thinking about things you could do with them. So if I've got, with a basic system, I've got 12, say, HD outputs, and every one of those is completely configurable and independent of each other. So if I want to have one main show and then I want to have a slightly different show that I'm running into a youth room, or I'm putting different captions in it, or I want to decide I want to have a separate web stream in portrait mode, then I could just keep adding those stuff up, whatever, based on what somebody dreamed up for the weekend, and then switch it back later.
Again, it's this kind of drop-in model. Wherever we need to go, we get the flexibility of what I'm seeing in this product is that you can just kind of drop and go anywhere you need to on the input side as well as the output side, and that to me is just that alone is pretty exciting. It's like a matrix switcher built in, to everything. You're throwing all things into one unit, and it gives the church so much flexibility, which is exciting.
Mike, question for you from Panasonic side. So in reading and watching some of the materials and different things, it talks about how it's all GPU based. Mm-hmm. So in the future, I know for those maybe that come from like a gamer background or whatever, you're thinking of your big gaming rig with your high powered GPU that you're looking to upgrade every year, and stay with the latest and greatest. Will the GPU be upgradable, or will that be something that Panasonic says, hey, 2 or 3 years down the road, we're recommending you guys upgrade your GPU to this so you have newer and greater features? Or will that be something that stays pretty stock for the life of the product?
Well, the product, such that the first version of the mainframe, the KC100, that hardware is pretty much locked in. But we are looking at introducing other larger versions of that, and of course it affects the price. And the other thing with the KC100 is it's aimed at things like the house of worship market, where it's trying to be entry level. We're trying to keep the cost down. But for other applications like big concerts and shows and giant scoreboard shows, we'll introduce larger GPU versions.
Gotcha.
Now, it would be possible to have multiple cores on the same network as well, and we're looking into some features where you can distribute some of the processing load across multiple servers. But that's down the road. That's where we're going. So I mean, cool. In terms of the upgrade, it's a question of you can't upgrade the server, but you can upgrade the system by adding more servers.
That's what I find out to be really inviting about this product, though, is it's like it's scalable. So a lot of times, if you're looking at a smaller church and they're wanting to buy a switcher, you always want to make sure that you're buying and looking forward to the future of what you might be growing into. And a lot of times we might underbuy, or we might overbuy, or we might underestimate our needs initially. And then a few years down the road, we're looking at another cost because we've grown. And so that's what I like about this, is like there's some scalability, there's flexibility of where you can place your control panels and your control surfaces. And then also the scalability of all the different kinds of equipment that you can feed into this system. Whether you're using the product that Panasonic is building, where it's going over your IT infrastructure, or if you still have cameras that are outputting HDMI or SDI, you can start with those and grow along with the system. So I think that's really promising for the future of, hey, you have a product now that you can scale with and scale forward, and you're not limited from the initial purchase.
Sure. I mean, say a couple of years down the road, it becomes possible to install some giant 8K LED board. I could throw a bigger Kairos Core server on my network, and instantly it can see every source that was on there, because every IP, every SDI or HDMI gateway is by nature a multicast. So it can be running to multiple cores and to ISO recorders too, if you want to do that. It's just the nature of 2110.
Yeah, I mean, with 2110, it really feels like kind of broadcast video is catching up to where audio got to 5, 6, 7 years ago. Where, I mean, our control rooms of the future are going to be a bunch of network switches, and it's like, because now it's like, man, where do you want your video go? Where do you want your audio go? I mean, I've even seen, routers now where you're patching all your video and your audio digitally. And so I think, man, it's a natural progression to see a switcher like this, where, I mean, I think I first saw on the Panasonic sheet that came out, it was like, here's the unit, and it's like this black box, and I'm like, well, what is it? Because it's like that is it. It's a computer.
Yeah, marketing's always asking me for graphics, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I got nothing.
What am I going to show you? And it's this black box, but man, what that black box can do, from an IP standpoint, and from a effects standpoint, and from a video delivery standpoint, it is. And I mean, the software side of being able to control everything that it can do from a user panel with a keyboard and mouse. I mean, that's pretty stinking awesome.
It is. You can do all of that, and you're only introducing 1 frame of latency, which is amazing to think of that technology and that speed and that processing power, and to be able to move that data and only have 1 frame latency. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. There's something you just hit on. A couple of you guys hit on that is kind of a hidden benefit of a system like Kairos that I really thought of, because I'm a little more still old school guy. I like the hardware. You give me a 4ME switcher, but you guys have all probably been there where something goes wrong with the switcher, and then what do? Is Sony or whoever coming out to fix it? Take a look at it, get under the hood, or do you have to ship it back and try to, pull that out of your system? And I'm really excited and intrigued about, the ability for technical support from Panasonic or whoever, who could actually just log into your switcher and take a look around and do the things that are so prevalent to, like, when phone systems switched over from analog to IP based, and it's like, oh, they just log into your server and they're just fixing stuff and working on stuff overnight. And you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I'd never thought of that on this side of things, but man, the benefit of that alone is huge, where you can get troubleshooting support 24/7 by taking a quick look at your switcher from a remote location and not have to send it all in. Could be a game saver for a lot of churches in this world.
We're being forced to do that. I mean, we're now, we're not really traveling out to customer sites very much. And we don't even go to our lab's not even 100% open. So our team goes in there, they build a system, and then they've got, and then they put in a VPN and they operate it from their homes. I mean, that was how we did the webinar. That's how we do most of our online demos. And even for a reseller training, we shipped the system out to them, and then we logged into it. And so, they can touch the panel and everything because it's all there, but they just put us up on a screen, and we walked them through the user interface. So, I mean, it looks, in the short term, we're probably going to be doing a lot of our system certification and end user training online, probably till the end of the year. And from a business perspective, that works out better for us. I think, like a lot of things that people changed to deal with the pandemic, if it works really well, why switch back?
What you just said actually for the church market also applies in the sense of multiple people can be trained to run a device like this, and then you can still have somebody who's the expert on your church staff who could also log in while things are going on if something goes wrong, or if there's, I mean, I love that ability, right? I mean, some switchers have a little bit of that capability of remote control, but this sounds like the sky's the limit on what you can get into and actually run.
It's just it really is a revolutionary way of thinking about your video infrastructure. And
Right.
you know, as you start to really peel the layers of the onion back, it really starts to make you think about, like, wow, what if? What could we? You know,
Well, I talk to a lot of real, top end broadcast live TV show TDs about this system, like last year. And the thing that they told me, because, everybody told me, oh no, a TD is a Grass Valley TD. He doesn't want to use a Sony. You're never going to get somebody to switch brands. And when I talked to them, they're like, oh, well, the reason for that is I've got this skill level with the Cayenne switcher because I've got all these hacks to work around managing all the internal resources on that thing, and know that I can flip this DVE from pre-game to post-game, and I know how to do that, and I got a special macro that does that I invented, and so if I use a Sony switcher, then I lose all my tricks. He goes, but with this system, I don't really need that, because if I want to build something, I just build it. If you want to find out more, if you want to schedule, if you want to arrange for a demo, contact your Panasonic representative, and we can set up an online demo, which is how we've been doing most of these demonstrations. And really, if you know what your topology in your system is going to look like, we can get a pretty good idea on what Kairos components and third-party elements that you would need to make that all happen.
Okay, Mike, thank you so much. Mike Bergeron is the Senior Product Manager for Live Production Systems with Panasonic. And today we've been talking about the Panasonic Kairos IP Live Video Production Platform. So thank you to our panelists. Thank you for Mike. My name is Brian Blackmore with Church Production. Thank you so much for joining us.